Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Hanani Tajuldin and my partner Farzana Muhammad from BA 2494A will be presenting to all of you one of the security contracts in Fiqh Muamalat, which is the transfer of debt named Hiwalah. Now I will present the definition and meaning of Hiwalah. In Arabic terms, the word Hiwalah refers to change or transfer. In literal terms, Hiwalah is to shift something from one place to another, which is derived from the word tahawala, or the root word is tahwil. Meanwhile, due to technical terms, Hiwalah refers to the transfer of a debt from one debtor to another's debtor account. The debtor's responsibility is removed when a debtor is transferred from one person to another for the same price. In other words, the first obligator is no longer obligated financially. The creditor can no longer collect the debt from the original debtor, since the creditor must now collect from the new debtor. Now I will explain the evidence, pillars and pros of Hiwalah. The evidence for Hiwalah is based on two sources. The first one is hadith and the second one is ijma. Due to the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said that the deferment of paying debt by the richer is an injustice. When there is one of you get the offer from others to transfer your debt to another person, just accept it. In riwayat Ahmad, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ also said, "Whom of you the debt is transferred to a rich person wants to settle the debt, please just accept the offer." Meanwhile, according to the ijma, most Muslim scholars opine that the phrase "please just follow" or "please just transfer" is an unnecessary command and not an obligation. In other words, when A gives a debt to B and after a while B transfers the debt to C, C will pay the debt to A. A has the option of accepting or declining the offer. Next, the pillars of Hiwalah consist of 5 things. The first one is muhil. Muhil is a person who transfers his debt to another person and is also known as the transferor. Next, muhal. Muhal is a creditor whose property or debt is transferred to be paid by another person instead of his debtor, which is known as the transferee. Muhal alaihi is a person who accepts a hiwalah for himself and is known as the payer. Muhal bih is the value of the items transferred by hiwalah or also known as debt. And the last thing is siha, which is referred to ijab, offer, and qabul, acceptance. If the pillars are not met or the person involved does not accept the agreement, the contract of hiwalah is null and void. Now, I will go through the hiwalah contract flow. The hiwalah contract is initiated by the transferor or debtor, known as muhil, making an offer to transfer his obligation to the transferee, also known as muhal alaihi, and accepting the hiwalah process. The transferee or muhal alaihi must then pay the obligation to the creditor, which is known as muhal, at the same price or amount, which is known as muhal B. Next, al-hiwalah is divided into two categories: hiwalah muqayyadah, which is restricted hiwalah, and hiwalah mutlaqah, which is absolute hiwalah. In hiwalah muqayyadah, the transferee needs to pay from a property of the transferor owing to him by the transferee or in the transferee's possession. This form of hiwalah occurs when a transfer is made respecting the debt of the transferee. This is the only type of hiwalah accepted by the majority. Meanwhile, in hiwalah mutlaqah, a person who gets the property is not restricted in how it may be used to reimburse the one who provided it to them. This is a sort of hiwalah in which the contract is completed without regard to the transferee's debt, and he accepts the transfer. The majority contends that the contract is a kafalah rather than a hiwalah. Last but not least, I will go through the types of hiwalah. There are two types of hiwalah, which are hiwalah al-haq and hiwalah ad-dain. Hiwalah al-haq refers to replacing a creditor with another creditor, thereby shifting the rights to claim from one person to another. Meanwhile, hiwalah ad-dain refers to replacing a debtor with another debtor, which effectively implies transferring a debt from one person's obligation to another person's obligation. Hiwalah ad-dain is practically inseparable from hiwalah al-haq because when the debt is transferred to the transferee, all the rights are transferred, such as the rights of guarantee or the rights of surety. Suppose the established debt for which one debtor replaced another is fungible and established as a liability. In that case, the transfer of debt is a valid transfer of rights, in which the principal debtor is the transferor and the ultimate debtor is the transferee.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name no Farzana binti Muhammad. Condition of al-hiwalah. The condition that determine whether hiwalah is legitimate are explicitly stated in Sharia Standard 2004. All parties, including the transferor, transferee, and payer, must provide their consent. The transferor must own the transferee money as well. If one debtor transfer another debt to another, this transaction is essentially an agency contract for debt collection rather than a debt transfer. However, this is acceptable and just denote an unfettered hiwalah. The payer need not necessarily be a debtor to the transferor. The transferred debt and the debt to be paid must both be known and transferable, and all parties must be able to act independently under the law. The transferred debt must also match the owing debt in kind, form, quality, and amount for restricted hiwalah. However, if the transferor is only entitled to the equivalent amount of debt, the transferor may transfer a smaller amount of debt owed to the transferee to be settled from a large amount owned by the transferor. The advantage of al-hiwalah. There are benefits to using a hiwalah contract, which is the ability to remit or transfer a debt to another debtor, allow the debtor to spread out and reduce his or her risk could persuade the creditor to grant him a loan because he or she has a supporter who will serve as the transferer of the payment. So for the second advantage, the creditor would benefit from being able to verify loan repayment and ensure that he or she could get their money back by requesting payment from the transferor, which is called as muhal alai, under the normal condition, or even if they were in default by getting their money back from the first debtor, which is we call it transferor. Bigger consequence, the debtor will no longer have to pay the creditor what he owns. But we must remember that if the transfer was accepted on the condition that the assigner was financially stable, then the assigner have the right to go back to the transferor. The transfer of debt also gives the creditor the right to ask the assigner to pay the debt. Termination of Al-Hiwalah contract. Al-Hiwalah contract can end when a certain event happen that makes the contract null and void. So there are 4 reasons termination of Al-Hiwalah. Firstly, mutual agreement between contracting parties to the end the Hiwalah contract. This return all the parties to the status quo to entering the Hiwalah contract. Hence, the transferee is entitled to claim the debt from the transferor and not the payer. Second, when the debt is effectively settled via full payment by the payer to the transferor. Third, when the payer dies and his transferee inherits his property. And fourth, when the debt has been written off by the transferee. Modern application in Islamic finance. Firstly, withdrawal from a current account, which is the issuance of a check against a current account, is a form of hiwalah if the beneficiary is a creditor of the issuer or the account holder for the amount of the checks. In this case, the issuer, the bank, and the beneficiary are the transferor, the payer, and the transferee respectively. Okay, if the checks recipient is not the person who owes money to the person who wrote the checks, then this is not hiwalah transaction, because hiwalah cannot happen if there is no debt. If the debt is not there, the deal become a Sharia compliance agency contract to collect the amount of the debt on behalf of the person who gave it away. Second, traveller check. A creditor of such an institution is the holder of a traveller's check whose value has been delegated by him to the issuing institution. When the owner of a traveller's check endorses in it favor of one of his creditors, it's become a creditor's check. A transfer of debt from the issuing institution to a third party is considered a debtor to the holder of the traveller's check. This debt transfer is constrained, and the exact value of the check that the institution received payment for is the amount of the debt. As a conclusion of this topic, as we see in the section on how hiwalah is used in the modern world, it is clear that this concept, this topic is at the heart of many modern financial practice. Most of this example take place in the traditional banking system, but there is one that stand out because it is not part of traditional finance. It is money remittance, also called the informal value system.